Good evening. Today we explore one of the most fundamental questions in human history. Does God exist? On my left is David, who believes in God. On my right is Mark, who identifies as an atheist. This debate will focus on reason, evidence, and meaning. Let us begin with opening statements.
I believe in God not because I was taught to, not because I fear death, but because belief in God makes sense of reality as a whole. The universe exists, life exists, consciousness exists, reason exists. These are not trivial facts. For me, God is not a gap filler for things we do not yet understand, but the foundation that explains why anything exists at all. I do not claim that belief in God answers every question, but I do claim that atheism leaves some of the deepest questions unanswered. Why there is something rather than nothing, why the universe follows rational laws, and why humans experience moral obligation and meaning. Belief in God, to me, is the most coherent explanation.
I appreciate this conversation. I do not believe in God because I see no sufficient evidence for a supernatural being. History shows that humans have always invented gods to explain what they did not yet understand. Over time, science has replaced those explanations with natural causes. The universe may be complex, even beautiful, but complexity does not require a divine designer. Natural processes such as evolution, physics, and chemistry are capable of producing order. Until there is testable, verifiable evidence for God, I see no reason to believe. Saying God did it explains nothing. It merely postpones curiosity.
Round 1. Why is there something rather than nothing? David, you may begin.
Mark, science is incredibly powerful, but it has limits. Science describes how the universe behaves once it exists. It does not explain why the universe exists in the first place. Even if we accept the Big Bang, we are left with a deeper question. Why did anything begin at all? Why do the laws of physics exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? Nothing has no properties. Nothing cannot produce something, yet something exists. I believe the most reasonable explanation is a necessary being, God, who exists by nature and does not depend on anything else.
That sounds compelling, but it's still speculation. You assume that nothing is the default state. But we don't know that. It's possible that the universe, or multiverse, simply exists as a brute fact. Saying God is necessary does not solve the problem. It just shifts it. Why is God necessary? Why not the universe?
Because the universe is contingent. It changes, expands, decays. Anything that could have been different or not existed at all requires an explanation. God, by definition, is not contingent. He does not begin, change, or depend on anything. The universe fits the category of things that need an explanation. God does not.
But definitions don't create reality. You define God as necessary and then claim victory. That's philosophy, not evidence. We don't know enough about reality to say the universe itself cannot be necessary.
Round 2. Order, laws, and fine-tuning. Let's talk about the structure of the universe.
The universe is not chaotic. It follows precise mathematical laws. The fundamental constants of nature are finely tuned to allow life. If gravity, electromagnetism, or nuclear forces were even slightly different, life would be impossible. This level of precision suggests intention rather than accident.
Or it suggests selection. We observe this universe because only a universe like this allows observers. If billions of universes exist, it's unsurprising that one of them supports life. This doesn't require a designer, just probability.
But appealing to an unobservable multiverse to avoid God seems equally speculative. At least God explains why laws exist at all. Why should reality be intelligible? Why should mathematics describe the universe so perfectly? Einstein himself found this deeply mysterious.
Mystery does not equal God. Human brains evolved to recognize patterns. Mathematics is a language we invented to describe reality. The fact that it works well doesn't mean the universe was designed for us.
Round 3, morality, objective or invented. Now let's move to morality.
If there is no God, then moral values are ultimately subjective. They are preferences shaped by biology and culture. But most people believe some things are truly wrong, regardless of opinion. Torture, rape, genocide. These are not just socially inconvenient, they are evil. That sense of moral obligation points to a moral lawgiver beyond humanity.
I disagree. Morality arises from evolution and social cooperation. Empathy, fairness, and reciprocity helped humans survive. Morality feels objective because our brains evolved that way, not because it comes from God.
But if morality is only evolutionary, then it has no authority. If tomorrow society decided genocide was acceptable, it would be right by that logic. Yet we intuitively know that some actions are wrong, even if everyone approves of them.
That intuition is emotional, not metaphysical. Humans strongly dislike suffering. That doesn't require a divine source. It requires compassion and reason.
Round 4, meaning and human longing. Final topic for this part, meaning.
Humans long for meaning, purpose, and transcendence. We ask not just how to live, but why. If the universe is ultimately accidental and purposeless, then meaning is self-created and fragile. Belief in God grounds meaning beyond individual preference.
I find that idea dangerous. Meaning does not need to be imposed from above to be real. We create meaning through relationships, creativity, and responsibility. The fact that life ends makes it more valuable, not less.
But if meaning is self-created, it is ultimately arbitrary. God offers meaning that is discovered, not invented.
Or God removes responsibility by outsourcing meaning to authority. I prefer meaning we choose.
Welcome back. In part 1, we discussed existence, order, morality, and meaning. In this part, we turn to one of the most emotionally charged questions in the God debate. If God exists, why is there so much suffering? Mark, you may begin. Round 5. The problem of evil.
This is where belief in God truly collapses for me. If God is all-powerful and all-good, then unnecessary suffering should not exist. Yet the world is full of it. Children die of cancer. Natural disasters wipe out entire communities. Innocent people suffer horribly for no reason. If God can stop this and chooses not to, he is not good. If God wants to stop this but cannot, he is not all-powerful. Either way, the God of classical theism does not exist.
I won't pretend this is an easy question. Suffering is real, painful, and often unbearable. But the existence of suffering does not disprove God. It challenges simplistic ideas about him. First, much suffering is caused by human free will. Violence, greed, oppression. These are not acts of God, but acts of people. A world with genuine freedom is a world where love is possible, but also where evil is possible.
That explains human cruelty, not earthquakes or diseases. What moral purpose is served by a child dying slowly from illness?
I don't claim to know the specific reason for every instance of suffering, but the absence of an explanation is not evidence of absence of purpose. Limited beings should not expect to fully grasp the intentions of an infinite mind.
Round 6. Is God silent? Mark, do you feel God is absent?
Absolutely. People pray desperately and nothing happens. Wars continue. Innocent people die. If God exists, he is silent at the moments when his voice would matter most. A loving parent would not remain hidden while their child suffers.
I understand that frustration, but silence does not equal absence. Many believers experience God not as a constant miracle worker, but as a presence that sustains them through suffering rather than removing it. Christianity does not claim that God is distant from suffering. It claims the opposite, that God entered human suffering.
That sounds poetic, but it doesn't stop pain.
No, but it gives pain meaning. A God who suffers with humanity is different from a God who watches from a distance. The Christian claim is not that God prevents all suffering, but that he redeems it.
Round 7. Science versus faith. Let's address science directly.
Science explains reality without invoking God. Evolution explains life. Neuroscience explains consciousness. Cosmology explains the universe's development. Every time science advances, God retreats. Faith fills gaps that science hasn't reached yet.
That assumes science and faith compete. They don't. Science explains mechanisms. Faith addresses meaning and origin. Science can tell us how stars form, but not why the universe exists or why rational laws govern it. Many founders of modern science were believers. They saw scientific exploration as discovering God's order, not replacing him.
But science works regardless of belief. You don't need God to make predictions or build technology.
Correct. And you don't need belief in logic to use logic either, but you still assume it's valid. Science rests on philosophical assumptions that the universe is orderly, intelligible, and rational. Those assumptions fit comfortably within theism.
Round 8. Religion and hypocrisy. Mark, you've mentioned religion as a problem.
Yes, even if God exists, religion has caused immense harm. Wars, oppression, abuse, manipulation. Institutions claiming to represent God often behave immorally. That alone makes me suspicious of religious truth claims.
I won't defend religious hypocrisy. It exists and it is real. But hypocrisy disproves human faithfulness, not God's existence. In fact, Christianity openly condemns religious hypocrisy. Jesus himself was harshest toward religious leaders who abused power.
But religion gives people moral cover to do terrible things in God's name.
So do political ideologies, nationalism, and even atheistic regimes. The problem is not belief in God, it's human corruption. Removing God does not remove evil.
Round 9. Comfort versus truth. Final exchange for this part.
I think belief in God is psychologically comforting. It helps people cope with fear, death, and uncertainty, but comfort does not equal truth.
I agree. Comfort alone is not evidence. But neither is discomfort evidence against truth. The question is not whether belief feels good, but whether it is true. Sometimes truth is uncomfortable. Christianity, in particular, confronts human pride, guilt, and responsibility. It is not merely a comforting story.
Or it's a powerful narrative humans created to survive.
Or it's a revelation that confronts us because it is real.
Before we move on, there is one final issue that often emerges when discussing suffering and belief: responsibility.
One thing that troubles me is how belief in God can reduce human responsibility. When tragedy happens, people say it's God's will. That can discourage action. If suffering has a divine purpose, why fight it? Why cure disease or challenge injustice?
That is a fair concern, but it misunderstands Christian theology. Christianity does not teach passivity in the face of suffering. In fact, it demands the opposite. Jesus consistently confronted suffering. He healed the sick, fed the hungry, defended the oppressed. He never told people to accept injustice as God's will. If anything, belief in God increases responsibility. If every human being is made in the image of God, then suffering is not abstract. It is personal. It demands response.
But believers often disagree on what that response should be. That ambiguity causes harm.
So does disagreement in secular ethics. The difference is that Christianity anchors responsibility in love rather than power. The command is not survive or win, but love your neighbor. That ethic has driven hospitals, charities, human rights movements, and abolition efforts throughout history.
Those achievements can exist without God.
They can. But the question is not whether goodness can exist without belief. It clearly can. The question is whether goodness makes sense without an objective foundation. Christianity claims that love is not merely useful, it is ultimate.
This brings part 2 to a close. We have explored suffering, responsibility, science, hypocrisy, and the burden of human choice. The disagreement remains, but the conversation has deepened. Welcome to part 3. In the previous sections, we discussed existence, suffering, morality, and responsibility. Now we address the central claim of Christianity, not merely belief in God, but the claim that God revealed himself in Jesus. David, you may begin. Round 10. Was Jesus just a moral teacher?
Many people say Jesus was a great moral teacher, but that description does not withstand scrutiny. Jesus did not merely teach ethics. He made claims about himself that no ordinary teacher could make. He claimed authority to forgive sins. He spoke of God as his Father in a unique sense. He accepted worship. He spoke of himself as the final judge of humanity. These are not the words of a mere moral reformer.
All those claims were added later by followers who exaggerated his importance. Ancient religious figures are often mythologized after death.
That explanation ignores how early these claims appear. The earliest Christian writings already present Jesus as divine. The idea that his followers slowly turned him into God over centuries is historically weak.
Round 11. The trilemma. Liar, lunatic, or Lord? David, clarify this point.
If Jesus claimed divine authority, then we are left with 3 possibilities. He was lying, he was delusional, or he was telling the truth. A liar would be morally corrupt. A lunatic would be mentally unstable. Yet Jesus displays profound moral insight, emotional intelligence, and coherence. That leaves the final option, that his claims were true.
That trilemma is false. There are other possibilities: legend, misunderstanding, or symbolic language.
Symbolic language does not account for the way his followers responded, worshipping him and dying for their belief. Legends also take time to develop, yet these beliefs appear almost immediately.
Round 12. The resurrection as a historical claim. Let's address the resurrection directly.
This is where belief truly departs from reason. Dead people do not rise. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and ancient texts are not enough.
The resurrection is not presented as myth, but as a historical event. There was an empty tomb. Multiple eyewitnesses claimed to see Jesus alive after his death. These witnesses endured persecution and death without recanting.
People die for false beliefs all the time.
Yes, but they die for what they believe is true. The disciples were in a position to know whether the resurrection happened. They were not inheriting a story. They were testifying to what they claimed to have seen.
Round 13. Alternative explanations. Mark, what alternatives do you suggest?
The body could have been stolen. The disciples could have hallucinated. The story could have evolved.
Each of those explanations has problems. Hallucinations do not occur in groups. A stolen body would have ended the movement instantly if produced. A slowly evolving myth cannot explain early creeds and eyewitness accounts.
You're still relying on texts written by believers.
All historical knowledge relies on sources. The question is not whether sources are biased, but whether they are credible and whether alternative explanations do better.
Round 14. Faith and reason. Is faith irrational?
Faith means believing without evidence.
No. Faith means trusting based on sufficient reason, not blind belief. We use faith every day, in people, memories, and reasoning itself. Christianity invites investigation. It does not forbid it.
But faith allows belief to persist even when evidence is lacking.
And skepticism allows disbelief to persist even when evidence is present. The issue is not faith versus reason, but what we consider adequate evidence.
Round 15, the cost of belief. Final exchange for this part.
Christianity does not offer belief without cost. It demands humility, repentance, and moral accountability. It confronts human pride. This is not a belief people invent for comfort. It challenges us deeply.
Or it's a powerful framework that gives meaning by imposing structure.
Or it is true, and therefore uncomfortable.
Before we conclude, one final issue remains: doubt.
I want to be clear, doubt is not rebellion or arrogance. It is intellectual honesty. I am not rejecting God because I want to live without moral limits. I reject belief because I do not find the evidence sufficient. Choosing disbelief is not easier. It often means accepting uncertainty without comfort.
I respect that. Christianity does not deny doubt. It includes it. Even Jesus' closest followers doubted. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. Indifference is. Faith involves risk, but so does disbelief. Both worldviews require commitment in the absence of total certainty.
But belief seems to demand a leap beyond evidence.
And disbelief demands a leap beyond meaning. If God does not exist, then reason, morality, and human longing are ultimately accidents. Christianity claims they are signposts.
Or projections.
Possibly, but projections alone do not explain why these longings persist across cultures and centuries, nor why the figure of Jesus continues to challenge belief and disbelief alike.
This brings us to a deeper realization. This debate is not only about evidence, but about interpretation. The same facts can lead to different conclusions depending on one's assumptions.
Christianity does not ask for blind faith, but for honest engagement. It invites skepticism, questioning, and investigation, yet it also asks whether we are open to truth, even if it demands change.
And atheism asks whether we are willing to accept a universe without ultimate guarantees.
The risk, then, is unavoidable. We now stand at the edge of conclusion. Part 4 will bring final statements from both sides, not to declare a winner, but to clarify what is ultimately at stake. Welcome to the final part of this debate. Over the course of our discussion, we have examined existence, suffering, morality, truth, and the claims of Christianity. Tonight does not end with a verdict, but with clarity. Clarity about what belief and disbelief truly require.
I want to end by emphasizing something important. Disbelief is not hatred of faith, nor is it moral rebellion. It is a conclusion reached through skepticism, caution, and a commitment to evidence. I do not deny that religion has shaped history, inspired art, and provided comfort, but none of those things establish truth. Humanity has been wrong many times before, even sincerely so. I refuse to accept extraordinary claims without extraordinary proof. The universe may be cold, indifferent, and silent, but that does not make it meaningless. Meaning is not diminished because it is human. Love matters because we choose it. Morality matters because we protect one another. Truth matters because we pursue it without shortcuts. I do not reject God to escape responsibility. I reject belief because I believe intellectual honesty demands it. If God exists, he will not be offended by doubt grounded in reason. And if he does not exist, then it is up to us entirely to care for one another in a fragile and temporary world.
I appreciate Mark's honesty, but I arrive at a different conclusion. I believe disbelief demands more faith than belief, faith that reason arose from irrational processes, faith that morality emerged without grounding, faith that human longing for meaning is an evolutionary accident rather than a signal. Christianity does not offer easy answers. It offers a claim that the source of reality is personal, that love is not accidental, and that truth entered history in the person of Jesus. The resurrection is not a myth meant to comfort, it is a claim meant to confront. If it is false, Christianity collapses. But if it is true, then it changes everything. Belief in God does not remove doubt, it reframes it. Faith is not certainty without evidence, it is trust based on reason, testimony, and experience. And it comes with responsibility, to love sacrificially, to seek justice, and to live truthfully. I believe God is not distant. I believe he stepped into suffering, bore injustice, and invited humanity into reconciliation. That is not escapism, that is confrontation.
Is there anything either of you would say directly to the other?
I would say this. If God exists, I hope he values honesty more than belief.
And I would say this. If God exists, honesty may be the first step toward belief.
The unanswered question. This debate ends not with certainty, but with a question, one that cannot be avoided. If God exists, then belief is not merely intellectual, it is relational. If God does not exist, then meaning, morality, and hope rest entirely on human shoulders. Either way, neutrality is an illusion. To believe or not believe is itself a choice. The question remains, what do you do with Jesus? Thank you to both participants. The conversation does not end here. It continues wherever honest questions are allowed. As the debate concludes, one final reflection deserves attention: the cost of answering the question. Belief and disbelief are often presented as purely intellectual positions, but neither exists in isolation from life. Every worldview shapes how a person loves, forgives, hopes, and endures suffering. The disagreement between David and Mark is not merely about facts. It is about what kind of universe we inhabit and how we are meant to live within it.
One thing I want to add is this. Atheism does not promise certainty or comfort. It does not claim the universe owes us justice or meaning. In that sense, it is honest, even harsh. It asks us to build meaning, knowing it may not last, to act morally without expecting cosmic reward, and to face death without guarantees. That is not nihilism, it is responsibility without illusion.
And I would respond that Christianity does not remove responsibility either. It intensifies it. If God exists, then every human life carries infinite value. Love is not optional, justice is not relative, forgiveness is not weakness. Belief raises the stakes of every choice. This highlights a crucial point. Neither worldview is neutral. Each demands courage, each demands sacrifice, each demands trust, whether in human reason alone or in a reality beyond it.
I admit that belief in God answers questions I cannot answer, but unanswered questions are not proof. I am willing to live with uncertainty rather than accept conclusions I cannot verify.
And I admit that belief does not eliminate mystery, but mystery does not negate truth. I believe the question is not whether we can prove God beyond all doubt, but whether belief offers a more coherent account of reality than disbelief.
Perhaps the most honest conclusion is this: evidence alone does not decide the matter. Interpretation does, assumptions do, willingness does. Some leave debates like this asking, who won? But the deeper question is not who argued better, it is which explanation one finds more compelling, more livable, and more faithful to the totality of human experience. If God exists, then ignoring him is not neutrality. It is rejection. If God does not exist, then belief is not faith. It is illusion. And yet, the figure of Jesus refuses to fade quietly into either category. He does not merely ask for admiration or dismissal. He asks for response. This debate ends where every honest search ends, not with silence, but with choice. The question of God cannot be outsourced to experts, philosophers, or debaters. It confronts each person individually, Not simply, what do you think is true? But, what are you willing to live as if it were true?